All right, let's get ready for our next speaker. Ante Vessels will be giving us a talk on anti-counterfeiting trade agreements. Questions at the end, please.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, if during the talk you cannot hear me anymore, just raise your hand. I'll try to speak up again. The anti-counterfeiting trade agreement. It's new legislation for billions of people, and it's made behind closed doors. We will have a few subjects here. I'll have an introduction. Is it okay to make new legislation for billions of people behind closed doors? Official versus leaked documents. Do we want to criminalize the young generation? Third part is an awesome lobbying machine that brought us TRIPS and may bring us ACTA. Access to generic medicine. Are patents more important than human lives? Counterfeiting or competition? Do we want harsh measures against competitors? And then about the European Union, transparency and vetoes. How can we restore parliamentary influence? I will start with a quote. Stringent intellectual property rules could hamper the spread of technology needed to fight climate change, by Paul David. And another quote. If Hollywood could order intellectual property laws for Christmas, what would they look like? This is pretty close, by David Viewer. The world map shows us the states with the highest gross domestic product per capita. These are also the states with huge portfolios of exclusive rights. The United States, the European Union, Canada, Japan, and some other states, mostly wealthy, are negotiating the anti-counterfeiting trade agreement. Initially, ACTA will be legislation for about 1 billion people. Negotiations take place behind closed doors. No drafts are published. There will be huge pressures on other countries to join later, to an agreement already fixed. In the end, ACTA may be new legislation for about everyone on the planet, made by a few. ACTA will contain new rules for the enforcement of copyright, trademark rights, patents, and other exclusive rights. The inclusion of patents shows ACTA is not limited to counterfeiting. It's not only about fake Gucci handbags. Highly complex patent cases are also included. I would like to characterize ACTA as a war on competition. In the United States, ACTA is to be adopted as an executive agreement. It will bypass normal processes of congressional oversight. In May 2008, an ACTA discussion paper leaked on WikiLeaks. The discussion paper proposes criminal measures against infringements without motivation for financial gain. That is a major break with the past. In earlier multilateral treaties, only infringements on a commercial scale were criminalized. The leaked document alerted many people. More than 100 public interest organizations published an open letter under the title, Secret Counterfeiting Treaty Must Be Made Public. They called upon the negotiating governments to publish immediately the draft text of the agreement. The governments did not release the documents. Meanwhile, presidential elections took place in the United States. one of the candidates promised change and transparency. And after he became president, his administration declared ACTA a state secret. The Electric Frontier Foundation and the Public Knowledge, they had a lawsuit against the government under the Freedom of Information Act. But after it was declared a state secret, they had to drop their lawsuit. They could not win at all. Let's move to the European Union for a moment. The European Union Council, that's the governments of the member states, will decide. The European Parliament asked for the ACTA documents twice, in a resolution and in a regulation, but did not gain access. And in fact, the EU Council declined to answer the question whether the final draft of ACTA will be published prior to political agreement in the EU Council. They were asked whether they would not do it during vacation. They declined to answer that, and they can do so, adopt it silently if they like. This leads us to the first political question. Is it okay to make new legislation for billions of people behind closed doors? You may like to confront your member of parliament with that. Official versus leaked documents. Do we want to criminalize the young generation? After all the complaints about secrecy, the negotiating partners wanted an appearance of transparency. They published a summary, a rather superficial summary. We will take a look at the version published by the Office of the United States Trade Representative. Discussed criminal measures are criminal penalties, destruction of goods, destruction of production materials, seizure of profits, and also criminal measures in cases of camcording motion pictures or other audiovisual works. In leaked documents, we see that the United States and Japan proposed criminal measures also in cases where there is no direct or indirect motivation for financial gain. Let's take a look at two examples which may fall under ACTA. A newspaper, whistleblower, or weblog author revealing a document in the public interest. Internet users accused of large-scale infringements by copyright holders. Does this start to look like a Christmas present for Hollywood? Imagine a kid, 12 years old, loves to download stuff, play with it, and upload the result to share it with friends. Should he put him or her in prison? Should the parents pay huge deterrent damages? These are the political questions we will have to answer in a fair and open discussion, and not behind closed doors. And we should not put the result in the treaty, because then it's hardly possible to change it again. And by the way, research shows that the music industry can benefit from downloading if new business models are adopted. Let's go back to the Office of the United States Trade Representative's document. ACTA will also contain a chapter on intellectual property rights enforcement in the digital environment. There's discussion about the possible role and responsibilities of internet service providers in deterring copyright and related rights piracy over the internet. Negotiating partners seem to disagree, and no details are known yet. If you really want to stop infringements on the internet, that can only be done by monitoring everything that happens on the internet. It can only be done by turning the internet into a police state. Political question number 2 is, do we want to criminalize the young generation? And in the next chapter, we'll take a look at an awesome lobbying machine which brought us TRIPS and may bring us ACTA. In the 1980s, Pfizer, a United States pharmaceutical company, started advocating to link exclusive rights with trade. With trade sanctions, developing states can be forced to adopt United States-style protection of exclusive rights. You start in the lower left corner. Companies that own private exclusive rights meet in advisory boards and advise the United States Trade Representative. Under the threat of possible trade sanctions, developing states sign bilateral free trade agreements. And then they have to use their limited public resources to enforce United States companies' private rights. And the result is money flows from poor to rich. The awesome lobbying machine produced bilateral free trade agreements. The WTO TRIPS agreement, that's the agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, a World Trade Organization treaty from 1994. And TRIPS has strong protection for exclusive rights. It was made by some 50 people, and it's a worldwide treaty now. The TRIPS treaty was followed by TRIPS plus free trade agreements, and now by ACTA. With ACTA, only United States companies in the advisory boards have access to the documents. They are cleared advisors. To prevent parliamentary influence and public outrage, the free trade agreements and ACTA are exclusive agreements. The documents are state secrets. The process clearly needs parliamentary and public scrutiny. By now, Japan and the European Union are very strongly advocating these ACTA and treaties as well. Access to generic medicine. Are patents more important than human lives? AIDS took millions of lives in Africa. Protected by TRIPS, pharmaceutical companies only served the upper side of the market for prices even higher than in the United States. The rest of the people could die. In 1997, President Mandela of South Africa signed a law to ensure the supply of affordable medicines. The United States and the European Union started to pressure South Africa. The United States prepared trade sanctions. I went too far, I guess. "41 pharmaceutical companies sued Mandela. Al Gore and Chirac were involved in pressuring South Africa. And then the unexpected happened. Public outrage over what was happening forced companies and governments to withdraw. Ultimately, this led to the Doha Declaration on the TRIPS Agreement on Public Health, a declaration that affirms the right of developing countries to protect the health of their populations. Pharmaceutical companies try to minimize the effect of the Doha Declaration. They try to overextend the definition of counterfeiting. They try to label generic medicine as counterfeit. They are not fighting counterfeiting, they are fighting competition. Let's take a look at the 2008 shipment of HIV medicine from India to Nigeria. It was financed by Unitate, a humanitarian organization. It was meant for the Clinton Foundation program in Nigeria. The medicine is not patented in India nor in Nigeria. It was sent by transit, the Netherlands. A United States patent holder protested. Dutch customs seized the shipment. The European Commission stated that the rules were applied correctly. After protests by public health groups and a letter from the World Trade Organization, Dutch customs released the medicine. Dutch customs seized 70 shipments in 2008, which were not counterfeited drugs, but legitimate generic medicines. Dutch customs should never have intervened. And Germany seized a few shipments as well. Michael Geist reports, based on leaked ACTA documents, the United States is pushing for broad provisions that cover import, export, and in-transit shipments. ACTA may limit access to low-cost generic medicine. ACTA may kill people. After the seizures became front-page news, the Dutch Minister of Development Cooperation, Bert Koenders, said that the European Union rules have to change. We can only agree with that. But you should not forget that ACTA may make it impossible to change the European Union rules. If you'd like to know more about seizures of medicine, check out, for instance, the website of Health Action International. Political question number 3 is, are patents more important than human lives? Counterfeiting or competition? Do we want harsh measures against competitors? If customs finds a shipment of Gucci handbags, they can easily find out whether these are genuine or fake. And if fake looks genuine, it's fraudulent imitation, counterfeiting. But ACTA will not be limited to trademark counterfeiting and copyright piracy. For instance, patents will be included. We already saw the effects patents have on access to medicine. But what about access to other products? Ever heard about patent trolls? As you may know, patents have unclear validity and scope. Whether the patent is valid and whether the competitor infringed it has to be decided in civil court. You can't leave that to policemen and custom officers. Patent infringements are not counterfeiting. There's no fake looks, genuine, no fraudulent imitation. In some fields, like software development, patents create a legal minefield. Software is full of ideas and unfortunately full of patents. All software developers ignore software patents to some extent, simply because every single use of program you write infringes on several patents. The situation is abused by patent trolls. They acquire patents at low cost, for instance, by buying bankrupted companies. Their patents tend to have broad claims on trivial matters so that infringement is unavoidable. Then they extort entrepreneurs, and you cannot retaliate against them. They do not produce anything, do not infringe themselves. ACTA may give patent trolls these tools: huge deterrent damages, statutory damages, suspend the entry of goods, suspend the release of infringing goods for at least 1 year, destruction of goods. Things go totally wrong here. We looked at access to generic medicine and we looked at patent trolls. And we see that in both cases, the state actually helps the wrong people. Will we be able to solve our environmental problems this way? Harsh anti-counterfeiting measures should only be available against fraudulent imitations. Exclusive rights limit competition. They have unclear validity and scope. Competitors can test validity and scope if the price of infringement is adequate compensation. Competitors cannot test validity and scope if the price of infringement is much higher, includes deterrent damages, seizures and criminal measures. Weak rights become sacrosanct, inviolable. Disproportional anti-piracy measures limit competition beyond proportion. They attack desired economical activity. A war on competition resembles an autoimmune disease. Political question number 4. Do we want to give rights holders harsh measures against competitors beyond cases of counterfeiting? Last chapter, European Union, transparency and vetoes. How can we restore parliamentary influence? In the European Union, decisions are normally taken as openly as possible and as closely as possible to the citizen. And this is especially true for the legislative process. ACTA will contain a new legal framework. Substantially, ACTA is legislation, at least partly. The European Union Council labeled ACTA as not legislative. Labeling legislative cases as non-legislative goes against the European Treaty, at least according to the FFI in its complaint with the European Ombudsman. As we saw earlier, the European Parliament has asked for the documents twice, but did not get access to the documents. In the United States, hundreds of advisors, many of them corporate lobbyists, are considered cleared advisors. They have access to ACTA documents. Lobbyists have access to documents members of parliament do not have access to. There's room to give ACTA documents to corporate lobbyists. Then the non-discrimination principle obliges to give the general public access as well. So I can only encourage people to ask for the documents. Vetoes. The member states of the European Union have vetoes on criminal measures in ACTA. If one member state of the European Union says no to criminal measures, they have to be taken out or made optional. One dedicated parliament can make a difference. According to the FFI analysis, the member states also have vetoes on non-commercial aspects of ACTA and on aspects that regard cultural, audiovisual and educational services. Again, one dedicated national parliament can make a difference. The European Parliament has a veto if ACTA changes EU legislation. And the European Parliament also has a veto if a specific institutional framework is established by institution cooperation procedures. You may like to take a look at the FFI analysis for this. Without a final draft, the European Parliament and the national parliament cannot assess whether their vetoes apply and should be used. Parliamentary scrutiny reservations. How can the parliaments of the European Union member states gain influence on ACTA? The parliaments of the member states can make parliamentary scrutiny reservations. Then they first have to see the documents before the member states can vote yes to ACTA in the Council. This way, the parliaments can block silent adoption in the Council and enforce transparency. And then we will see whether ACTA can face the daylight. I listed a few questions. There are, of course, many more political questions we could ask, but these are the ones I took out. Is it okay to make new legislation for billions of people behind closed doors? Do we want to criminalize the young generations? Are patents more important than human lives? And do we want to give rights holders harsh measures against competitors beyond cases of counterfeiting? The images I used come from OpenStreetMap and Wikipedia. I would like to thank you for your attention. There are some groups which are very active. If you follow the first link, you will see many links to documents and what's going on about ACTA. I don't know how much time I used. If you have any questions,
Questions?
Hello, Ante. Thanks for your talk. I'm Jeremy Zimmerman, the co-founder of La Quadrature du Net. I just had a quick question and maybe a comment on this. Last time I heard about ACTA, I've been told that there were no leaked details yet about specific parts related to internet, apart maybe what are the scope of the exceptions for commercial or non-commercial purpose, which obviously contain the internet. Are there more details than this yet? So this is for the question, and for the observation, I think that the access to medicine point is very explicit to many people, when the rest of the patent or internet or infringement stuff is much harder to make understand. So yes. I think it will be crucial to get to reach a coalition with people defending access to medication and access to medication in developing countries. I
yes.
think this will be crucial into bringing awareness to those questions, and I'm looking forward for this to happen.
Yes, the letter from the 100 public interest groups, there were many groups which care about your health and access to medicine. So there, especially in the United States, there's already a coalition there. And it would be very good to have such coalitions in Europe as well. On the internet provisions, nothing is known yet. The United States would make a non-paper, which are just some ideas. And well, I'm not sure whether that non-paper was produced. I believe it was. But there are no positions yet known from the other sides. And for the European Union, it's important, for the European Commission, that it stays within the European Union rules. Otherwise, the European Parliament gets a veto. And they do not want the European Parliament to say no to certain aspects, because then they have loss of face and everything, and have to renegotiate. So we have to carefully watch that.
Yes, I have a question about counterfeiting. Basically, as I understand it, goods can be stopped by customs if they receive complaints from a producer or from an importer. And since customs officials are not, well, they're not trained in seeing the difference between a genuine and a counterfeit product, yes, they would have to take the word of the producer, which gives a whole new range of tools if you want to stop competition. I wonder if you could just talk briefly expand on that a bit, especially if it's true that an importer can also, a main importer of some product into a country can call up customs and block competition.
Can you repeat the last part of the question? It's hard to...
Yes, the last part is if I am an importer of a goods from
yes,
some other country, can I call up my customs official, my local customs officials, and have seized goods that someone else has imported, like grey imports or no?
Yes, the seizures of medicine, which happened in the Netherlands, that was because the patent attorneys protested. So that happens very often. That they.
Yes, but that was, as I understand, done by the producer of the medicine, not by an importer. Like, could an importer of medicine into the Netherlands have stopped that shipment? Is what I'm asking, I guess.
Yeah, but this was only in transit, and under the rules, it should be allowed. There's an interpretive problem here now.
Another remark, it's very encouraging to hear about this veto from the Parliament or Member State. And in the past, we achieved some important decisions within the European Parliament, whether with the software patents or the telecoms package, which hopefully will continue to influence, which really shows that our actions, when combined, can be useful. And for people around here who care about those issues, maybe in their member state, and are active on those topics, just want to remind that there will be the second part of a workshop we had yesterday that will be at 18 HAR in the Bike Shed Red. So basically it's about the members of EDRI, but I guess that anyone who feels concerned about being active on issues about intellectual property, network neutrality, and regulation in general should come and participate to this workshop later on. So
yes.
we will discuss about the means of action and how to achieve such decisions as a veto, for example, of the Parliament.
More questions? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.